Ladies and gentlemen, Andy here. I went from depressed and suicidal to living a life of abundance and joy. If I can do it, you sure as hell can too. So I recently got a comment on my depression video from a guy who's feeling a little depressed and going through depression himself. If any of you are currently feeling a little depressed or you're going through suicidal thoughts or any of that stuff, I encourage you to reach out to someone for help. I also have links to my depression article and my depression resources down below. You can check those out. But if you are depressed, my number one piece of advice is be kind to yourself. Depression can be a hell of a beast. I was there myself. Maybe this video will help you. If it does, amazing. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But let's get straight into it. Everyone asks the same exact question when they're depressed, or I'll say they have the same exact mindset, which is I'm extra special and I'm more depressed and more special than everybody else, and nobody else's depression is like mine. And I say that with love because I was depressed for many, 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 many years. I wrote a big article about it. I did a big video on it. And I have worked with a ton of clients who are depressed. I've worked with clients that are suicidal, and every single person has the exact same story. It's a big part of why they're depressed, which is I'm unfixable, I'm broken, I'm more fucked up than everybody else, even though every other depressed person says the exact same sentence, almost like they're copy pasting from each other. I'm the most, inhuman. This guy even says it, I'm an inhuman turd. I'm dehumanized. You're dehumanizing yourself. And that's okay. That's a big part of depression. If you're not familiar, I was depressed for 8 or 9 years myself. And I was suicidal for a long part of that. My life completely fucking fell apart. And my parents helped me get back on my feet through, their own love, through action that they got me to take, through therapy, through a little bit of medication for a couple of months, a lot of different things, but really it was just taking action and I guess reintegrating with society. Because a big part of the reason that I was depressed is I did, what this guy is doing and what I'm just going to say almost every depressed person does, but most depressed people cut themselves off from society. And you might still be in society, you might still be living your life, going about your day, doing normal stuff, but in your head, you dehumanize yourself and you basically put up walls around yourself and you say, I'm worse off than everyone else, or I'm less deserving, or I'm more of a piece of shit, or, any of these different things. But you're sort of pushing the rest of like everybody else away and saying, they're all better than me, or sometimes you even say, I'm better than them. There is an element of that in depression with some people, but you're basically pushing everyone else away and saying, I'm extra fucked up or I'm special. And if you go on my website, and there's also a YouTube video on it too, and just search for depression, killyourinnerloser.com/depression. I talk about my full story with depression. This is basically an autobiography of my life, at least like the depression part. And so there's a video associated with it as well, which is what this particular guy commented on. And I also talked about, one of my suicidal clients that I worked with and how she worked through that and what the coaching was like and what she learned from it and the action that she took and all of that. So both of those videos help. On top of that, you'll see if you are depressed yourself. I say this at the top. If you're going through depression or you know someone who is, skip straight to chapter 3. You can read the whole article if you want. It's a really long article. The video is like 2.5 hours long. I literally talked about my entire fucking life of depression. And it's like a scripted video too. So it's not just like a ramble. It's like straight up scripted 2.5 hours of, like I said, it's basically my autobiography. But if you are depressed, jump down to Hope, which is where I talked about how I improved it. And I have a bunch of resources and books and podcasts. And here's a bunch of articles that I've written specifically for depression. Like if you're literally suicidal, I would recommend reading this article, Don't Kill Yourself. Like I talk about a lot of stuff in there. I have a bunch of articles on self-improvement. I talk about therapy. I talk about support networks. I talk about medication, counseling, some stuff that I did. And so all of that can help if you're depressed. I'm not saying that will fix your depression, but it might be a nice place to start. And like I said, I've worked with depressed clients, plenty of depressed clients and suicidal clients, particularly Thea. That's Thea. Look at that happy, beautiful little face. Look at that big smile. She's actually married now. So she's gone on to do some amazing things in her life. But let's answer this question. So this comment was left, or this question comment was left on my depression video. And I get questions like this quite a lot from depressed people, where they're basically like really hurting. And this happens a lot in depression. If you've ever been on depression forums or depression support networks or anything like that, even counselors, I've spoken to quite a few counselors about the topic of depression and suicide and stuff like that. And again, one of the things that comes up a lot when you're really depressed, and I did exactly the same thing, is you think you're special, or maybe the opposite of special. You think you're the most fucked up and the most disgusting and the most unlovable and unworthy human being on the entire planet. Mother Teresa talked about this, where she was like, the real poverty is not a lack of food, but it's a lack of love, and it's a lack of dignity. And so a big part of depression for a lot of people is putting yourself on an island, or putting walls up around you and saying, I'm extra messed up, I'm extra fucked up, nobody's as unlovable as me, I'm extra broken. And part of how you do that is when other people reach out to you and say, hey, it's okay, I'm depressed too, or I was depressed, or I was suicidal, and here's how I overcame that. Part of how you lock yourself off from that is you go, I'm extra fucked up. Their depression didn't count. They weren't really depressed. They were just like pretending to be depressed, or they were a little bit depressed, but not as depressed as me. And so over the years, I've had lots of comments from like that, or lots of like clients even that I've worked with that go, Andy, I know you said you were depressed and suicidal, and you literally held the knife to your wrist like 100 times, and you would cross the road and look at traffic and go, man, I wish I could just stop right now and this would all be over. You literally wanted to die. You'd made a promise to yourself that you were going to kill yourself when you got to 30. You were basically just working up the courage. I know you say all of that, Andy, but you weren't as depressed as I am. I'm extra depressed. And I've just come to hear that a billion times, and therapists that I've talked to and counselors that I've talked to have said the same thing. They're like, yeah, it's like one of the first things that depressed people do is they say, I know you've worked with other depressed clients, and I know you've like helped all of them and changed their life and, improved their lives and stuff, but I'm a hard case. Or another thing that people will do is they'll say, here's all of my life story. Here's everything I'm going through. Like, am I broken? Am I unfixable? And every therapist and counselor will be like, no, like, why you just think like every other depressed person that I've worked with. Like, I know you think you're not. I know you think you're a special case, but that's what every depressed person says. They all say that they're a special case. They all say they're broken, unfixable, unlovable. They all say like, oh, I know that you've worked with depressed people for the last like 20 years of your therapy practice, but like, I'm special. And every single one of them, if they just stick at it, because a lot of the time depressed people don't want to stick at it, because that's part of the mechanism of depression is it's this all-encompassing black cloud hovering over you 24/7 that doesn't want you to get better. Depression is a very interesting state of mind. It's a very interesting hopelessness that wants to keep being hopeless. And so that's why I don't force help on people, especially if they're depressed. I would never say to someone like, oh, bro, come on, you got to fix your depression. I'm like, no, like if you want me to help you fix your depression, I will. And what you're going to see is part of this comment doesn't want me to, or hasn't asked me to. And so you'll see that I'm not going to force my help on this particular person. But if someone comes to me and says, I'm really depressed, I want coaching, can you help me? Then I'll help them. Like I showed you on the screen, Thea. You can just find her video on my channel. Just search on my channel for depression, and you'll see the interview that I did with Thea. She came to me and said, hey, look, I don't have, I'm not going to pay for your full coaching. I'm depressed. Can I pay a little bit less? Can you just do some one-on-one calls with me? And we did for quite a while. We did for, I don't know, like 5 months or something, 6 months, I think. I think it was longer than that. I can't remember. But we'd do calls every now and then. And yeah, it was, that's the people that I help. So if someone comes to me, I'll definitely help. But if someone is just in the process of defending their depression, like you'll see these comments definitely are, or this particular person, I guess I'll speak to you, Rishan775. You're currently in the state of like defending your depression. And that's okay. Like that's kind of how depression goes. I was like that. If somebody had said to me like, hey, I was depressed and I fixed it, you can do it too. If somebody had said that to me when I was depressed, and in fact, people did. I was like, fuck off. I'm extra depressed. I hate life. I hate myself. I'm extra bad. I'm just a bad human being. I deserve to die. Blah, 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 blah. I just believed that. I was never going to ask for help. I was never going to listen. I basically had to hit rock bottom, and my life had to fall apart, and my parents had to step in and help me get back on my feet. All of that needed to happen for me to improve myself. And you, Rishan, might be in that position. There's a really good video that talks about this exact topic, and I have it in my depression article. Actually, no, it's in another article called What to Do When You Feel Hopeless and Helpless, which is in the depression article. So it's in the resources section. So what to do when you feel hopeless and helpless. And this is also like kind of an article about depression as well. And this video here, it's called Talking About an Incel About Starting a Relationship. This guy, I love this guy so much. So he's a client of this guy. This guy's like a therapist. His YouTube channel is called Healthy Gamer GG. He has like 1 million or 2 million subscribers. I've watched him grow over the last like couple of years. It's been amazing. He does content very similar to mine, but he's a therapist and he talks about psychology and stuff like that. And he basically sits down with people and coaches them. And so this guy here was like super depressed. And the whole point of this video is to show you and anyone else who might be depressed that a big mechanism of depression, or part of the way that depression works, is it's self-perpetuating. Depression wants to keep you depressed. And so this guy is, a bit depressed and a bit hopeless. And at some point, the therapist, the guy here on the left, says, you have a very protective hopelessness. And depression, I talked about this with Thea, the woman at the top of my depression article here, this woman here. She was depressed and suicidal. Depression is there to protect you. And that might sound like one of the most insane things that you might ever hear on my channel, but depression serves a purpose. A big part of the reason that depression exists is to keep you safe, to keep you from having to do some of the things that might scare you, which might be going out and talking to other people. It might be facing the fact that you will die one day. It might be dealing with nihilism, dealing with a lack of meaning in your life, dealing with the fact that you don't like your body, that you don't like your job, that you feel hopeless, that you feel like you were born into something that you didn't consent to, which is life. Like, let's be honest, none of us consented to be born. And that was a big part of the reason why I was depressed, because I didn't want to be here. I didn't say, yes, please, parents, please birth me. Please give me all the challenges of life. Please give me all the heartache. Please give me all the suffering, all the pain. I didn't consent to that. And so part of my brain or my soul's way of dealing with that was to sinking into depression. I don't want to fucking be here. And the depression was almost like an answer to life. And like I said, a lot of depressed people, it can come with a lot of arrogance. It can come with a lot of a feeling of like, I know. And that was definitely me when I was depressed. I was like, I know life is suffering. And anyone who tells me that it's not is wrong, and they're stupid, and I'm smarter than them, and I know better than them, which is, and I'll be gentle with this, what your comment is here. This comment just reads out, I know. Your entire comment is you saying, I know. Hey, Andy, I know you weren't depressed. You have no clue what you're talking about. Which person do you think might have a better grasp of depression? You, the person who's in it right now, or the person who went through it for 9 years, eventually got a real understanding of it and broke through the other side, then read 7 trillion books on psychology, spoke to like 50 different fucking therapists and counselors over the year, watched hundreds or thousands of videos on depression, on psychology, from therapists, from people who'd been through depression, then did things like LSD trips like 100 times to really get an understanding of my brain, then worked with a metric ton of other clients who were depressed, who were suicidal, helped them work through it as well, helped them get an understanding, and listened to them the entire time so I could get more of an understanding of the depression and all of that kind of stuff, and really just see how it affects different people. Then work with a lot of people who didn't want to change or who weren't ready to. That's probably a more fair way of saying that. Weren't ready to let go of their depression or to start working towards a brighter future and really understand the hopelessness mechanism of it, and then wrote at this point, like 50 articles that talk about, and videos and podcasts and stuff like that, that talk about depression, psychology, unhappiness, sadness, different emotions. Then read all of the Stoicism books, then wrote a video course. Again, I'm talking about my Play to Win video course, where I talk a lot about psychology, all of that. My God, I could keep going on, and has been doing this at this point for like 15 years. Which person do you think might have a better idea of what depression is, or has a clue of what they're talking about? Do you think it is me, who might have a little bit more of a clue what they're talking about? Or do you think it is you, who's currently in depression? And if you're depressed, you know as well as I do that when you're depressed, you're not rational. You don't see the world the same way that other people do. You are very, very, very stuck in your own limited viewpoint. And it's very hard to see the forest for the trees, because all you can see is your pain, your suffering, the fact that it doesn't ever fucking seem to end. The fact that there's no fucking way out, or at least it feels like that. And so I understand the feelings. Believe me, I do. You speak exactly like every other depressed person that I've ever met, that I've ever worked with, exactly the same. I'm the extra depressed person. Everybody else has no clue what they're talking about. Even the person that has this like insane track record of actual evidence of everything he's talking about. I get it. I felt the same way. Every single therapist or counselor or anything like that. I never went to therapy or counseling, but I knew they existed and I thought about going to them when I was depressed. But every single one, I'd be like, no, this person's a fucking idiot. They have no idea what they're talking about. They can't help me. They're stupid. They don't understand depression. They've never been through it, blah, blah, blah. And I was so focused, because that's what a mechanism of depression is. I was so focused on being correct and retaining my worldview and holding on to the depression, because that's a big mechanism of depression that I've seen in everybody that I've worked with and in myself. So focused on holding on to the depression that it's like, I'm not letting this go. And a big part of the way that we hold on to it is by saying that we're right and everybody else is wrong. We're extra fucked up and nobody else understands our pain. That's what depression is. It's an isolation from other human beings. You might be talking to them as you go through your day. You might have a job. I did for a little while until I lost my job and I couldn't fucking function anymore. But you might be out there like talking and interacting with other people, but in your head, in your heart, in your soul, you're completely isolated. That is a big part of depression. It's a feeling of nobody understands me. I might be talking to people, I might be going through life, but I'm almost like a ghost that's just like floating through life, and nobody actually fucking understands me. And that is a big part of depression. And part of the way that you work through depression is letting that go. And that's really, really, really challenging for some people. It might be for you, Rashawn. You might be at the point where like, I'm not letting go of the idea that I know. Like, this Andy guy's a fucking idiot. You might be listening to everything I say right now and be like, yeah, that all sounds great, Andy, but you're a fucking idiot. That's a big mechanism of depression. And so realize that the depression is serving a purpose for you. It is trying to protect you, as I talked about in the videos that I showed on screen. You know, that one, you have a very protective hopelessness. A big part of depression and hopelessness is it's trying to protect you. And you might say, what the fuck is my depression trying to protect me from? From having to participate in life, from having to fail, from having to be rejected, from going up to women and saying, hi, I like you, and them saying, no, fuck off, I don't like you. Not that they ever say that, but like, that's what your heart feels. I talked about that earlier in this video here today. It's a protection from everything, really, from failure. It's a protection from the idea of death. You know, if you're depressed like I was, it's like you're trying to control death. Rather than saying death is something that's just going to randomly take me and I have no control over it, a big part of the reason that I was depressed is like, I would hold the knife to my wrist and say, I have the power to end this right now. I'm in control. You know, life doesn't get to just make me randomly suffer whenever it feels like it. No, I get the final say. I can end my fucking life. And so that can be a weird mechanism that depression is trying to sort of protect you from the randomness of death and the randomness of life, and the fact that at some point, yeah, the Grim Reaper, or if you want to talk in those terms, the Grim Reaper will come for you and say, hey, time's up, buddy. That's all you had. And so depression is a weird way of saying, I understand death. And so, yeah, I get all this, man. I'll keep reading your comment, but I want to make it very clear that I don't expect you to change. You can change if you want to. Don't change if you don't want to, but I'm never going to force my change on something because I've just worked with so many depressed people. And a big part of the depression is that everybody around you, like this happens a lot. When someone's depressed, they'll start opening up to other people and being like, hey, I think I might be a bit unhappy. I think I might be depressed. And because people want to help, what they do is they jump in and they say, okay, do this. Start going to the gym. You need to get a job. You need to do this. Try doing this. And so many clients that I've worked with, particularly Thea, who I showed on the screen before, this is Thea here. Look at that happy face. Look at that happy face. But Thea had this as well, where when she opened up about her depression, all of her family and friends gave her all of these suggestions to fix it because they want to fucking help. You ask them for help, they want to help. And she just felt even more pressure and even more depression because at least before she was depressed and she could just sit around being sad and depressed and wanting to die and all of that. But when she opened up about it, now she has to be depressed and have all these feelings and go out of the house and go for a walk or go to the gym or get a job or have friends or any of this stuff. That's just like even more pressure. And so an interesting mechanism of depression is the thing that helps you let go of depression, which is taking action and going outside and doing things and, all the things that every expert will tell us to do. That stuff just makes you more depressed. Like the thought of doing that stuff makes you more depressed. And so it just feels like pressure. And so part of how I worked with Thea is we got really deep in her depression and her suicidal, thoughts and feelings. And I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Like, you're depressed. Let's figure out why. You're obviously depressed because you want to control your own life to some degree. You don't want other people to tell you what to do. Like tell me the reasons. I got her to tell me the reasons. And basically the reasons that she came up with was I've always done what everyone wants me to do and that hasn't made me happy. And so I said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, I don't know. And I was like, well, that's okay. We can sit here and figure it out. And I think she was expecting me to tell her what to do because that's what a lot of therapists do. That's what a lot of counselors do. That's what most people do. They'll give you ideas because they're trying to help. And I just didn't give her any ideas. I said, we'll sit here and we can figure it out. What things feel nice to you? What do you like to do? And she thought for a long time and she was like, well, I like cups of tea. And I said, cups of tea sounds pretty good. Yeah, that sounds pretty nice. Do you want to have some cups of tea today? And she thought for a little bit and she was like, that'd be nice. And I was like, okay. What if you just start by having a cup of tea whenever you feel like it? What else do you like? And we just slowly over the weeks, over the months, came up with more things that she sort of liked to do. I like to feed my cats. I like to go for a walk with no pressure. I don't have to go for a walk, but I'm allowed to. I like to lay in bed. And then she was like, but I'm not allowed to lay in bed because then people tell me I'm depressed. I have to go outside and do things. And I was like, what if you just lay around in bed all day? You said that's a nice thing to do. So what if you give yourself that gift of just doing that nice thing that you want to do? And so I'll say the same sort of thing to you. Mr. Rishan, if you want to, you're allowed to, and you don't have to, and don't take this as me telling you what to do. But if you would like to, you are allowed to sit around and think of some things that you like to do. And then if you want to, you can just do some of those things. And if you don't want to do that, then don't do that. If you want me to go fuck myself, then, I'm not going to go fuck myself because you want me to, but if you want to say in your head, Andy should go fuck himself, then say Andy should go fuck himself. But I've just come to see over the years that the kindest thing or the most helpful thing I can do for someone who's depressed is get in there with them and be right there with them in their depression. And a lot of the time, like you, Rashan, you might not want me to do that. A big part of this comment and then your reply and then your follow-up reply, which I'll read all them out in their entirety in a second. A big part of everything you've written here is you don't necessarily want me to be in there with you. This is like you saying, Andy, you have no clue what you're talking about. I just feel even more dehumanized. Andy, you were depressed, but you were able to have sex. What does that make me? I'm an inhuman turd. You're very much not wanting me to be in there with you. And that's okay. You know, again, I would never force that on someone, but if you would like someone to be in there with you, then that's okay. You're allowed to. Like, you can just ask for help, but none of this is you asking for help. I guess maybe I can read out the comments so everybody else can see what I'm referring to, because I've read ahead. I've read all the comments. I've read his comments. So, hate being that guy, but when someone says they're depressed and then that they have regular sex, I feel that they have no clue what they're talking about. Probably because I obviously compare myself to the story. I mean, that's the whole point of why this is posted, right? No? To help guys in a similar position. I mean, yeah, okay. A little bit of that, yeah. But honestly, the big part of the reason why I wrote the story was to get it all out, to let go of it myself. But yeah, if someone want to be helped, then beautiful. But I would never force someone to be helped. And I think you've made that mistake. I think you've made that assumption that if I'm posting this video on depression, that means I want to help every single depressed person. No, not if they don't want me to. And if you don't want me to, which I don't think you do, because you're in the position of defending right now, you've watched my video and you've defended your, because that's what depression does. We want to defend our fucking depression. If somebody comes along and says, I was in a similar position and here's how I worked through my depression, if we're currently in the phase of being stuck in that depression or wanting to hold on to that depression, because again, it serves many purposes. Depression serves a million fucking different purposes, and that's going to be different for each person. But if we're in that position, we want to fucking cling on to the depression. Or you could phrase it like this: our depression wants to keep itself around. And so the depression wants to defend itself. And that's what your comments are. It's you defending yourself against what you perceive, or what your depression perceives to be an outside force trying to remove your depression. But I'm not here to remove your depression. If you're depressed, I want you to be depressed. Sorry, I'll phrase that again. If you want to be depressed, then I want you to be depressed. If you don't want to be depressed, then that's when I can jump in and be like, hey, I'll help you. And that was exactly the mindset that I had with Thea, you know, the depressed woman that I showed. She's no longer depressed. The ex-depressed woman that I showed on the screen. You know, she was a bit defensive the first couple of calls that we had because she expected me to walk in and be like, hey, I'm going to fix your fucking depression. And depression doesn't want that. Depression wants you to fuck off. And so what I said from the very beginning was, yeah, tell me why you're depressed. Let's talk about it. And when she told me all the reasons why she was depressed, I was like, yeah, if I was in that situation, I'd probably be depressed too. And she was like, wait, really? And I was like, yeah, think about what your depression is serving. Like, think about the point that it's serving. And we talked about it. And she was like, but why am I suicidal? You know, everyone's telling me that I shouldn't be suicidal and it scares me to be suicidal. And I was like, all right, why do you think you're suicidal? And she was like, well, you know, we talked about it for a while. And she was like, because my life sucks and I don't want to live it. And I was like, so suicide, or the idea of suicide, is an exit strategy. And she was like, huh, I guess so. And I was like, yeah, suicide is the fact that you have suicidal thoughts is your body trying to keep it safe, keep yourself safe. Your body is basically saying, or your mind or your soul or whatever is saying to you, I can't stand this pain anymore. I want it to be over. And so suicide, like the suicidal ideation, is your body trying to keep itself safe. It's saying, I can't take anymore. Please, I need to protect myself. And part of how I will protect myself is I will end the pain. And yes, I will end my life along with it. That's almost like a consequence. That's not the goal. The goal is to end the suffering. People who kill themselves, like who commit suicide, do it because the pain won't fucking stop and they see no other way. It's not because they don't want to fucking live or they want to die. They just want the fucking pain to stop. It's why they self-medicate and do a bunch of different things. It's the purpose that depression serves. Depression is often, or a big part of depression is apathy. That feeling of like, I just don't care. That's a protection. If you can say, if your brain or your soul can say, I don't care about the pain, you know, you go into a deep depression and an apathy and you say, I don't even care about the pain, whatever, life is suffering, we're all going to die, like I don't give a fuck. That's a protection. That's a literal protection from the fucking pain. And so, you know, we went deep on that. And I said, so in a way, your body is just trying to look after itself. Your heart or your soul is trying to protect you. And the suicidal thoughts are an exit strategy. And she thought about that for a while and she sat on that she was silent for quite a while. And she was like, so my body is trying to look after me with these suicidal thoughts. And I was like, yeah, your body just doesn't want you to suffer. And she thought about that for a while and she was like, oh my God. So in a way, maybe I could be grateful for my suicidal thoughts and maybe they're trying to look after me. And I was like, yeah. And if you want to, you can kind of think of the option of suicide as a last resort. And I said to her, look, if you want to kill yourself, I'm not going to tell you not to kill yourself. That's not my fucking right. I'm not your dad. Like, if you want to kill yourself, who the fuck am I to say don't do that? You're allowed to. Plenty of people do. And I can sit there and say they shouldn't kill. It's like, well, they did kill themselves. So what does it matter if you think they shouldn't? So I'm not going to tell you not to kill yourself. But what if you took that option of killing yourself and you just kind of took that and put it in your back pocket? You kind of put it in the back pocket and you go, okay, that's my ace up the sleeve. That's my last resort. I'll keep hold of that. And if I ever want to, I'm allowed to. No one's going to stop me anyway if I'm really fucking determined. But I'll put that in the back pocket. And what if I try some other things first? So what if I try, and then we talked about strategies. Again, I have a whole bunch of like strategies and ways to improve depression and all of that in the depression article and blah, 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 blah. But what if we keep that idea of suicide? What if we keep that in the back pocket and it can just be there as kind of like a backup plan? And she really liked that idea. She's like, that's amazing. Okay. So the suicidal thoughts aren't bad. I'm not a bad person for having them. I'm not evil for having them. I'm not pathetic or weak for having them. It's my body trying to look after itself. And I was like, maybe it is. And so the same thing with depression in general. Depression is, and the fact that you dehumanize yourself, because you're doing that to yourself. I know you're not consciously doing it. I get that. But you're the one dehumanizing yourself. Your thoughts are what are dehumanizing you. And that's okay. Like, I did the same thing when I was depressed, but that's keeping you safe. It's keeping you from the feeling of like, oh, some guy's going to come in and force his help on me. Andy's going to make this video and I'm going to be personally fucking forced by Andy somehow, forced to get over my depression. And that's going to be a fuckload of work, of pain, of suffering. I don't want to do that. That's even worse than being depressed. It's the kind of the lie of depression is like, when you're really depressed, you believe that fixing your depression would be worse than your depression because of the effort it might take, the failure that might come, the struggle that might happen, the fact that it might be temporarily more challenging than just sitting there in bed, laying in bed, being depressed all the time. So yeah, that's why I never force improving depression on someone. I never get in there and be like, and if you watch the video, you'll see that I'm very careful. And the article too, I'm very careful to not say like, hey, you need to do this. I literally say, if you want to do this, you can, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. So yeah, I'll keep reading. But it makes me feel even more dehumanized. Yeah, that's a big mechanism of depression. Like I said, that protects you from having to do the things that might be a painful struggle for you right now, which is going and exercising, making friends, getting a job. Like, I don't know your life. And obviously you're just in a YouTube comment. And don't expect, by the way, this video to be, this isn't coaching, if that's not clear. This isn't me like coaching this particular guy. Like, obviously it's just a YouTube comment and me generalizing about depression. But yeah, like if you as a depressed person are able to attract multiple girls, then what does that make me? Just an inhuman turd. If you say that it makes you an inhuman turd, then sure. But I don't think that. You're very welcome to call yourself an inhuman turd and to dehumanize yourself. I personally wouldn't. I would say that makes you human, but I would give you a big cuddle if you wanted me to. I would hold your hand and say everything's okay if you wanted me to. If you didn't want me to do that, then I wouldn't do that. But I don't think you're inhuman. But you do. And that's part of depression. I thought that I was fucking inhuman too. So congratulations, you're exactly the same as me. Which is funny, while you're making an entire paragraph about how you're not like me, or rather that I'm not like you. But you are exactly like me. The stories are exactly the same. Byron Katie, who's one of my favorite people, says there are no new stories. We're all just telling the same story. And you're telling... This really just feels like a copy-paste from what is exactly out of my brain when I was depressed, and out of every depressed person that I've worked with and every suicidal person I've worked with. This feels like a copy-paste. This is exactly how every other human feels. And I know that when you're depressed, you don't believe that statement and you feel like, yeah, fuck off, Andy. Like, you're not exactly the same as me. You had sex, therefore you're different. And that's what every depressed person does. They go, well, you were tall and white, so therefore you're different. You had a family that loved you, so therefore your depression wasn't as bad as mine. Well, you live in a Western country and I don't. There's always a reason why. And that's us dehumanizing ourselves. You go on to say, again, I know what I'm talking sounds very egotistical. It does, but that's depression, my friend. That's depression. I say this to some people if they're able to hear it. I don't know if you are, but so I'll be gentle with it. But depression is egotism. Some of the most arrogant human beings that I've ever met on the entire planet have been the most depressed. Depression is arrogance. Depression is a story. It's like reverse arrogance. You know, most people think of egotistical or arrogant as like, I'm the best, I'm God, I am a king. You know, they think of narcissism like that as well. You think narcissists are people who are like, I'm the best on the entire planet. No, most of the time, narcissism and egotism and arrogance. Okay, let's just talk about narcissism for a second. Most of the time, narcissists are incredibly insecure. They're the most insecure people that you'll ever fucking meet in your entire life. Go and look up the definition of narcissism. Go and read psychology textbooks on narcissism, and you'll see that it is often paired with an incredible inferiority complex, which is dealt with by pretending that you're the best and pretending and telling yourself and everybody that will fucking listen that you're so great. It's a desperation for validation because you don't really like yourself. Narcissism is usually a desperation for validation. And egotism and what was the other one I said? Arrogance can often be the same thing. Egotism and arrogance can come from a deep sense that you're not as good as everyone else, which is definitely what I see a lot in depressed people. And I myself had that too. So yeah, I know what I'm talking about sounds very egotistical. It does, but that's the depression talking, my friend. I was the exact same way. Which is funny, right? I keep saying I was the exact same way while you're writing paragraphs about how you're very different from me. And it's like, brother, I understand all of this. And I don't mind if you don't know that I understand all of this. That's okay, but I do. But just tell me, how does that make any sense? Well, it doesn't make sense through your lens. Because you're looking at things through depression. Nothing fucking makes sense when you're depressed. Like, that's the point of depression. So how does that make any sense? It doesn't to you because you're depressed. How do you on one hand say you have a relationship and then you cheat on her, which was a big part of, I've mentioned that in many videos, and on the other say you can't leave your house? Because people can come to your house. Also, I could leave my house. It was just incredibly fucking painful and I would stay at home for weeks at a time. I don't accuse you of lying, but it's so incompatible with each other. It's incompatible if you don't look for how it could be compatible. In other words, if you're very focused on how this can't make sense, which is what you said at the start, then yeah, you won't try and make any sense of it. And that's a big part of depression, is like that part of you that's like, I know, and you're not open. Like a big part of figuring out the world is being open-minded. And depression is the opposite of open-mindedness. It's literally the opposite of open-mindedness. It's like, I know better. I know everything. Nobody else understands the world. I know it better than everyone. I know life is suffering. I know life is pain. I know my life sucks, blah, 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 blah. Like, depression is a big form of arrogance, or a big part of depression is arrogance and thinking you know everything and everybody else is wrong and picking apart people's, lives and saying, no, this person was depressed, but he's not really. He's lying. He's full of shit. How could he possibly be depressed, but then he has sex with other women and he cheats on his girlfriend? How could he even have a girlfriend if he's depressed? That's not even true, blah, 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 blah. You can't meet with girls if you are scared of people. Is that true? This makes no sense. Yeah, because your depression doesn't want it to make sense. Is it true that you can't meet with girls if you're scared of people? Isn't that what everybody on this channel is doing? At least all the guys who want to improve their dating and their sex lives, and all the women who want to improve their relationships and their sex lives. Like, aren't they scared of people? I mean, some of them are. Aren't they scared of people, but they're also meeting people? Like, you can do both of those things at once. You can have a fear and then overcome it, and that fear is still there. Like, that's... Anyway. I listened to it all, and the things I said still make no sense to me. That's okay, my friend, because you're depressed and you don't want them to make sense to you. That's why they don't make sense. Because if the things I said made sense, like if my video made sense to you, that might mean, at least in your brain, you're like, that might mean that I have to fix my depression. Jesus fucking Christ, I don't want to fix my fucking depression. I do not want to work through this. I don't want to let go of the idea that I'm an inhumane turd, because that might be a lot of effort. That might also mean that I have to remove my identity, and depression also comes with identities for some people. What I mean by that is if you've been depressed for long enough, like I was, you start identifying as a depressed person. You start identifying as, I am a piece of shit. You literally start walking around going, I am an inhumane turd. Like, Rashan, you literally believe you're an inhumane turd. But if you watch a depression video and you allow your mind to open a little bit and see that someone else has gone through depression and improved it, that might mean that you might have to let go of the label that you're an inhumane turd. And because that's been an identity for you for, I don't know how long, but like probably a long time, that you're not good enough, that you're not as good as other people, that you're depressed, that you're a piece of shit, that you're an inhumane turd, that you don't deserve happiness, because you might have been hanging on to that for a long time, that can be incredibly confronting to start letting go of, because it feels like everything you thought you knew might be wrong. And that's how I felt when I first started working through my depression. It felt like, holy fuck, has my worldview, I had a worldview that the entire world is suffering, everyone is stupid, I'm the one that knows better than everyone else, all these people that are happy are actually fucking retarded. And, I would say things like you said. It makes no sense to me. I would say that all the time. I'd be like, you're all lying. What you're saying is incompatible. I would say that about lots of people, especially religious people. I hated religious people more than anyone else because they would be like, I know that God loves me. And I'd be like, that's incompatible. If God loves you, how come there's wars and suffering? If God loves us, how come there's suffering in the world? Those two ideas are incompatible with each other. I would speak exactly the way that you're speaking constantly, all the fucking time. And I would be like, well, if God loves us, then why do people die? If you're so happy, then why you won't be happy if you get cancer? Like, I was just so fucking desperate to pick apart everybody else who was happy, because if I even allowed myself to consider the idea that if I allowed myself to even consider the idea that there was a possibility that I could improve my depression, holy fuck, I would have to let go of the whole worldview that I'd had for the last, at that point, 10 years. And that was my identity. I was the depressed person. I was the piece of shit. I was the guy who knew better than everyone else and who knew what they were talking about. Like you said, I literally would walk around going, these people have no clue what they're talking about. Like, I thought that about therapists. I thought that about people that were more intelligent than me. I thought that about everyone who was happy. I thought that about religious people. I thought that about spiritual people. I thought that about people who were high achievers and who were successful and productive in society. I thought that about people who had a family. I thought that about women. I thought that about men. I thought that about everyone. I literally thought everyone had no clue what they were talking about, and I was the smartest person on the planet. And that was a big part of the reason why I was depressed, was because I thought that I knew better than everyone else. It's very fucking hard to connect to other human beings when you're sitting there on your high horse at the very top, or thinking that you're at the top, thinking you know better than everyone else. And I've said this before. I've seen so many, or I've worked with so many depressed people that are incredibly, you said it yourself lower down here, egotistical. I've worked with so many people. Depression often comes with so much fucking egotism. And this idea that you're better than everyone else, while simultaneously saying that you're worse than everyone else. How does that make sense, my friend? While we're sitting there talking about these two things are incompatible, whatever, you said it here, these two things are incompatible. How does it fit together that you know better than everyone else? I have no clue, yet at the same time, you're an inhumane turd. How do those two ideas fit together? Now, I know how they fit together, but while we're pointing out inconsistencies, my friend, depression is inconsistencies. Depression is ignoring everything, not ignoring, but it is ignoring, pushing aside, rationalizing away, and ignoring all of the evidence in front of you, around you constantly, because there's evidence of life can be beautiful. There's evidence that other people are happy. You push all that aside and say, no, they're wrong. They just don't know. They're ignorant. They're stupid. And that's what I did for the longest time. I would look at all the evidence of everyone else on the planet, not everyone, but like all the evidence of all of the people who were happy, and I'd say, they're wrong, they don't know, they're just faking it, they're lying, and I'd push it all aside, and I'd ignore the evidence, and I would just hang on to my worldview that life sucks, and life is suffering, and they're stupid, and they don't know any better. I was telling all these fucking stories, and I had these narratives like you do. And that's okay, because that's part of being depressed, but yeah, man, like, this right here, you can tell this story, but like, if you believe my video, if you believe that I really was depressed, that I really did hold a knife to my wrist a fucking billion times, that I really did want to die, that I had made a promise to myself that I would kill myself when I was 30, if you believe that, and then you believe that I improved myself, man, that might mean that you have to let go of this. You have to let go of the fact that you're inhumane, that you're a turd. Now you might have to start, your brain might have to start thinking like, oh, fuck. Like if he did it, Jesus Christ, does that mean I have to do it? And he obviously put in a lot of work. He was depressed like 15 years ago. He's been working on his self-improvement for 15 years. Jesus Christ, I don't want to put in 15 years worth of work. Like what the fuck? That's terrifying. That is terrifying. That would terrify someone who wasn't depressed, let alone someone who is. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the jury, and other lovely people who are sitting here, that is why I talk about, let's get real big and real serious for a second. That is why I talk about baby steps. That is the genesis of this channel. That is why I talk about just do a tiny little bit every day and don't overwhelm yourself by looking at all of it. It is because I was depressed and suicidal, and now I live a life of abundance and joy. And the only way that I did that was tiny little baby steps. If I even considered doing massive things, which at that point for me, massive was leaving the house and being around other people. That was massive to me, let alone getting a job, let alone just being a functioning member of society. Those things, if I considered them, they would have fucking terrified me. I would have just ended my life. I couldn't even think about those things because that was just too much. And so all I could do was baby steps. And my parents, and I will always be so unbelievably grateful to my lovely parents, they gave me baby steps to do. I went back home to them. I was crying for like 3 weeks straight, literally just like crying all day. They would leave I would keep it together. They would leave for work and I would just cry for like 5 hours a day until no sound was coming out. My voice box was ruined. There were no tears coming out. And I would just do that every single fucking day. But they gave me the idea of baby steps and they said, all right, all you have to do is do the dishes today. And I couldn't fucking do that. I was like crying into the sink, could barely even fucking do the dishes. That was like a monumental task, but I would do the dishes. And slowly as the weeks progressed, they would say, okay, now vacuum the floor. Now mop the floor. Now clean the bathroom. Now go outside and mow the lawn. And slowly but surely, I added up these baby steps over time. And eventually got to the point where it's like, okay, fuck it, maybe I can go for a walk. And I would go for a walk and be around people. And the first time I did that, I texted, I ended up calling my mom. And I was like, you're never going to believe where I am right now. And she's like, where are you? Where? And I was like, I'm in a shopping mall. There's people around here. I can't believe I did this. And I was out there for like 45 minutes on my own, just in a shopping mall around other human beings. Because that was like the first milestone that I hit. That took a couple of, I think like 2 weeks or so. Now I went to therapy. Got some antidepressants, slowly but surely started stacking these baby steps together until eventually I had written a resume. I went and applied to a bunch of jobs. I just handed my resume to retail jobs, got a couple of offers, worked at a job, eventually got promoted, eventually moved, found another girlfriend. I've talked about that relationship. That wasn't a happy relationship. So I went back into the cycle of, unhappiness and stuff like that. Eventually moved past that, found myself at 28, sitting there, no friends, all of that kind of stuff, completely fucking miserable again. And I was like, all right, maybe I'm going to do something about this. Found a bunch of self-improvement channels, found a bunch of channels where they do like social experiments and guys walk up to girls and go, here's a flower and stuff like that, little like social experiments. And I watched thousands of these videos to work up the courage that maybe I could go up and talk to other human beings too. I eventually made some friends. I found Good Looking Loser. I found the Approach Anxiety program. I started talking to women in person, started hitting on them, started having sex, started improving my body, lost a bunch of weight, made some friends, built all of this community and everything that we've seen here, eventually became a coach, started helping other people with the same thing, eventually started making money, found Imogen or met Imogen somewhere around there, learned a bunch of relationship skills, all of that kind of stuff. Eventually we had threesomes, we dated women together. We're now seeing a woman for about 1.5 years. She's absolutely amazing. She's had a beautiful impact on our life. That's how I got here. And all of that might seem like, Jesus fuck Christ, dude. Like, how did you do all that? That's a lot. And it's like baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. But if I tell you to do something big, that's going to, your depression's going to arc up and go, fuck no, dude. Like, no. And so baby steps. And again, Mr. Rashan or anyone else who might be depressed, if you don't want to, don't. If you want to watch my video and be like, fuck this guy, he wasn't depressed, like, fuck him. Beautiful. Do that. I only want what you want. If you want to be depressed, I want you to be depressed. If you don't want to be depressed, I don't want you to be depressed. If you want to be happy, I want you to be happy. If you want to be miserable, I want you to be miserable. If you want to be connected to other human beings, I want you to be connected to other human beings. If you want to be completely disconnected and feel like an inhumane turd, then I want you to be completely disconnected and feel like an inhumane turd. I am not here to force my viewpoint or to force my help as if I'm Jesus fucking Christ, I don't think Jesus Christ was sanctimonious, but as if I'm Jesus Christ or some sanctimonious guy, I come here to tell you what to fucking do or how to live your life or to force my help on you as if I'm the fucking fixer and you're broken. Because at the end of the day, you're not broken. Your depression is serving a purpose. I would know because I was depressed. Even though you think I wasn't, I was depressed for a long time. And I know that depression serves a purpose. I've worked with enough coaching clients who know that depression serves a purpose. And so as long as that purpose is being served, you will hold on to the depression. But at the moment where you don't want to be depressed anymore, or when that purpose is no longer fulfilling to you, and you start thinking, fuck, I don't want to be depressed anymore, that's when you'll start seeking the help. This might be your first few steps into that. This has obviously hit a nerve for a reason. You watched my video and you wrote 3 replies to it that obviously hit a fucking nerve. That is for a reason. Realize that that defensiveness in you is serving a purpose as well. At the end of the day, you're going to do whatever you want to do, and that's all I want for you. That's all I want for all of you. If you want to be depressed, be depressed. If you don't want to be depressed, don't be depressed. I'm here to help the people that say they don't want to be depressed, and to the people that come along and say, I want to be depressed, or I don't want to change my life, or I want to be unhappy. Then congratulations. I want you to just keep doing whatever you want to do. You probably won't enjoy my content. I probably won't have a lot to say to you, which is funny when I've just recorded like a 1-hour video saying things to you, but I'm saying this more to other people than half and half to you who left the comment and half to other people. But at the end of the day, if you want to do something that makes you unhappy, do something that makes you unhappy. But if you want to be not depressed anymore, then don't be depressed anymore. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, hope this was helpful. Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. That's how I improved. If you want to take baby steps, take those baby steps. If you don't want to take baby steps, don't take baby steps. If anyone would like more help with anything at all, whether that's sex, dating, relationships, money, happiness, spirituality, losing weight, goals, meaning of life, whatever that might be, I offer coaching. I will leave a link in the description below. As always, go out there and crush those goals. Whatever your goals might be, whether that's money, relationships, sex and dating, fitness, health, friendships, whatever, we are here to help you make those beautiful goals come to life. Ed did it. Taylor did it. Harry did it. None of them are special. If you're listening to this, you know you're capable of more than you're currently giving. You already want something more than what everybody else around you seems to be content with. You want to achieve more, be more, give more to the world. You know it, and I know it. You're destined for something beautiful. Click the link to the coaching in the description below, and let us help you get there. Happiness starts today.